The embargo for Assassin's Creed Shadows is now over with some early reviews coming out. On top of that, we have a little bit of a sad update, at least in my opinion, on the God of War TV show that's set to come out. And then there's also going to be the Saber CEO's comments in regards to the failure that was Saints Row. We have a fair bit to talk about, so if you're enjoying this, make sure you hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to keep up with gaming news. But let's just jump into the first topic. The early reviews for Assassin's Creed Shadows are now out, and it's pretty predictable. It's receiving very high praise and high scores from a lot of these legacy media outlets, with IGN giving it a 8 out of 10, not the typical 7 that you would expect from them. With many influencers that have received access to the game earlier, most of them are saying that they're pretty happy with it. There's only a handful of people that are very negative towards it. But one thing that seems to be pretty common is that people don't particularly like the story of this game. And there's also been a fair bit of criticism, at least from a gameplay perspective, in regards to the two characters really not intentionally being two separate characters, but more so like a solo traditional Assassin's Creed character split into two. But with all the drama that's going around with Assassin's Creed Shadows, I'd say give it a week before we have something real concrete to talk about in regards to sales numbers and the actual game itself. I don't really think anyone was expecting many of these outlets and shills, let's call them what they are, to be objective about this game. Moving on from that, we have a really interesting comment here from the Saber CEO. So Saber Interactive CEO and former Embracer interim chief Matthew Karge dropped an absolute shade on the shutdown of Violation, the company who made the failure that was the Saints Row reboot. He is quoted as saying, "They were so expensive for what they were. They didn't know what they were building. They didn't have any real direction. It couldn't last. And so who's going to fund them for their next game after this disaster?" Which is a little crazy that such a high-level executive running off the hire Space Marine 2 is willing to talk like this about other studio teams and the industry as a whole. He goes on to say, "It would be nice in an ideal world for everyone to have a job, but the days of throwing money at games other than the GTAs of the world are over. This business needs to mature. If it doesn't, the whole business is in trouble, and unfortunately that means layoff." Which I guess could be seen as fair considering there's so many big budget flops that are happening in the industry right now. But as many others, including our own panelist, the Cream NATO, have brought up, only programmers, devs, and coders are seeing the ramifications of these layoffs, not the top executives making these absolute ass decisions. When confronted by Stephen Totolio from Games Files, who asked if high-level heads should have been rolled at Embracer, he made a very bizarre statement that said there are no bosses. That's the problem. Embracer had no structure. So how are they going to have bosses? Nobody was getting rich at Embracer. I mean, people had stock, but it's not like anyone who's taking big cash payments. I think this is the point where we're going to bring out the press X to doubt meme, because who honestly expects to believe a massive company in the billions of revenue apparently has no bosses? Because we can all see publicly, at the very least, the chairman, 2 CEOs and a CFO that could be blamed for those decisions. And speaking of gaming CEOs and executives making some terrible decisions, this brings us on to the Palworld lawsuit. At a game developers conference panel for Palworld, the publishing manager John Buckley talked about how this lawsuit against his game actually came as a bit of a blindside, and he is quoted as saying, "This obviously came as a shock to us. I think it came as a shock to a lot of people because it's alleged patent infringement, which is something that no one ever considered." Continuing to say that when we discovered it was the patents they were going after for, pretty much everyone at Pocket Pair is a huge fan, so it was a pretty depressing day. And now for all the people who looked at this and said, well, no shit, they'd have a problem with Nintendo suing them for this game, Bucky did also mention, "We were pretty vocal before releasing Palworld that we did legal checks before the game released and they were all cleared in Japan." The other issue here is that the patent rights Nintendo are attempting to hold in Japan and in the US were both filed after the announcement of Palworld, with the claim that throwing a captured device at a creature of a monster is Nintendo and Nintendo's alone. If successful, this has potential to set a very dangerous precedent for patent IP and copyright abusers in the gaming industry. Who's going to claim that shooting a gun to kill an enemy is theirs and everyone else is stealing from them? Swinging from a grappling hook in games can only be done in Batman and Spider-Man games, maybe? What a world. Moving over to the rivalry that is Overwatch and Marvel Rivals, pardon the pun on that. In a somewhat predictable fashion, Overwatch streamers are once again returning to the game from Marvel Rivals, with some saying that Overwatch 2 is the superior version. DeFran, one of the streamers with over 900,000 followers on Twitch, said that Overwatch is more about individual skill. Marvel Rivals is pretty much just about what hero you pick and ults, which could be disputed. However, Apply went after the Marvel Rivals performance in that, saying it's just not polished yet. Maybe I'll come whenever it feels better, but as of right now, I have a good PC and I can barely run this game, dude. Now, over on the Twitch side of things, Overwatch 2 is gaining significant ground on viewers compared to the Marvel Rivals competitor. However, on the Steam charts, it's not even close at this moment. Is this just a case of Overwatch fans that have Stockholm Syndrome to the game, or has it gotten genuinely better since the disaster that was the no PvP mode? Be sure to let us know in the comments how you feel about this one. And finally today, we have to talk about the God of War TV show. And what a shocking twist that nobody could have expected, there's going to be a God of War TV show, and the writer revealed that Amazon had already ordered 2 seasons in advance. But here's the catch. He also can't play video games. Like, at all. Ronald D. Moore, best known for writing Battlestar Galactica and multiple Star Trek shows, speaks about how he was picked up by Amazon to help write the show, quoted as saying, "I'm working on this adaptation of this video game that's called God of War, that Amazon has ordered 2 seasons of, and they asked me to come in. I'm literally in the writer's room, that's my new thing." The concerning part is that he admitted to not being able to play the games, and the last time he had properly played was during the arcade in the 80s. Kind of like our resident Extra Zero. He talks about his struggles to play God of War games. The controllers now. Press R1. Which one is R1? Oh look, I'm dead. I can't quite get a hold of that. If the main writer and showrunner cannot play these games and truly experience the struggles and stories of Kratos, can he be trusted to bring a true-to-source adaptation of the Ghost of Sparta to our screens? I have a lot of doubts on this, and this does raise the question of, could this be as bad as the Master Chief's portrayal in the Halo show? After all, most of his experience is on sci-fi projects. The other point would be, is a TV adaptation really necessary? The cutscenes from Cory Balrog's Sony reboot are practically the movies that you can go and watch on YouTube, and I think you can do that for a lot of Sony games, honestly. So that's all for today. Thank you very much for tuning in to get a quick update on all the news, but if you want an in-depth look at all the news, make sure you do check out our streams that we do from Monday to Friday. You can get a full rundown of everything that's going on there. Make sure you are subscribed with the bell notification on, and we will see you all in the next video.